Welcome to Tzu Chi This Week. I'm Mary Lee. It's good to have you with us. Coming up in this week's top stories, Indonesia Tzu Chi volunteers bring aid to flood survivors in Jelambar's North Jakarta. In the Philippines, TIMA doctors are joined by local volunteers as they conduct a free clinic in Tanauan in Leyte Province. We get a behind-the-scenes look at how moving images and stories of Tacloban's blessing ceremony is captured. We start the show in Indonesia's Jakarta. Days of torrential rain beginning in mid-January have left parts of the city submerged underwater. Though floodwaters have receded in some areas, in other areas such as Jelambar in North Jakarta, water levels are still knee-high. With most of the residents still living in temporary shelters, Tzu Chi volunteers have been working with the military to deliver aid supplies to those in need.
Days of torrential rain in North Jakarta have left the streets of Jelambar with floodwaters over knee height. To help Tzu Chi volunteers along with military officials are handing out aid supplies to those at temporary shelters.
Memotivasi kami juga lah, jadi bukan.
I think what Tzu Chi does is really good. The love of the Tzu Chi volunteers has motivated us to help and serve the disaster survivors. My colleagues and I all feel honored to do so.
Regardless of where the disaster survivors are, Tzu Chi volunteers wade through the floodwaters to personally deliver their love. Relief items included hot food, vegetarian noodles, water, biscuits, and daily necessities. These disaster victims need to be cared for and need someone to listen to them, especially at a time like this. With the right care, they will find comfort and won't think about the damages or inconveniences caused by the flooding. Tzu Chi volunteer Livia, who was a victim of last year's flood, knows well of what the survivors are experiencing and thus wants to be on the front line helping others.
I
think these disaster survivors are really strong. From them, I have learned to face hardship and also how to share my love so that I can bring happiness to others. Treating the disaster survivors as her own family, Livia is grateful for the opportunity to give and hopes that the love and care of Tzu Chi will help these disaster survivors on their path to recovery.
Besides the flooding in Jakarta and North Sulawesi's Manado, North Sumatra has not been spared from devastation. Mount Sinabung erupted for the first time in August of 2010 after 400 years of inactivity. And in the past month, lava has continued to spew forth, forcing those living nearby to flee. The latest eruption happened on January 19th, and Tzu Chi volunteers visited emergency shelters 3 days after to distribute much-needed aid supplies. During their visit, volunteers found a shelter housing over 100 evacuees, but has only 2 bathrooms available. Thus, to help, they will construct more restrooms. Indonesia's Mount Sinabung has erupted once again, covering nearby villages in layers of volcanic ash. Located in North Sumatra, the volcano has been active since last September's sudden eruption. 29,000 villagers living within a 15-kilometer radius of the volcano have all fled to a total of 42 emergency shelters. Many elderly, pregnant women and infants are among the evacuees.
Currently, only a few relief items are available, but we're still lacking in things like medicine for infants and children and female sanitation products. The elderly also need a place to sleep. They can't continue to sleep on the floor.
With so many evacuees, some have to stay in a hut or a tent. Upon visiting one shelter housing over 1,000 survivors, Tzu Chi volunteers discovered the facility has only 2 bathrooms. Thus, the volunteers decided to tackle the sanitation problem.
We have decided to build more restrooms for them.
This trip also marks Tzu Chi's 3rd relief distribution in the area. As the farms here supply most of the nation's produce, the continuous eruption has ruined hectares of farmland and impacted the local economy. To avoid endangering human life, the local government has decreed all villages within 3 kilometers of the volcano must relocate. The medical team responsible for the free clinic in Tanauan of Leyte Province was made up of TIMA doctors from Taiwan and Malaysia and Sweden, as well as local Filipino volunteers such as Lania and her daughter Crystal, who had to travel by boat then by bus in order to participate in the event. Whether it was helping participants at the clinic or residents at the distribution venue, Lania and her daughter seized every opportunity to lend a helping hand.
With her reading glasses on, thoroughly checking everyone's registration forms, is SEPI volunteer Lania. As local residents pour into the free clinic, Lania remains calm, as this is her fourth time volunteering at Tzu Chi's medical clinics. Helping alongside Lania is her daughter Crystal, who is also a nurse.
Before they can go to the different stations where the doctors are, they have to go first, fill this up first to make it easier and faster. The flow is faster.
Only 21, Crystal actively takes part in Tzu Chi's medical clinics to reciprocate all the support and encouragement that she and her family have received. Having been notified of the free clinic at the last minute, and with plane tickets sold out, the mother and daughter pair had to travel by boat then by bus before arriving in Tacloban several hours later.
I feel fulfilled with whatever things I have done for them here. So I can return back whatever blessings that was given to me. My father, he was saved, so I think it's a good way of giving back, helping the people here.
Lania's husband was working in Tacloban when Typhoon Haiyan struck. Fortunately, he managed to escape to safety with the help of others. With communication lines down, Lania's husband lost contact with the family for 4 days. Worried, Lania and her daughter traveled for 2 days before arriving in Tacloban to confirm his safety.
From Cebu to Tacloban, 2 days travel. 2 days and 2 nights, no food to eat.
During the time that it is very difficult to pass the area, that they're still here looking for me, that they come here looking for me, of which on the time I want to go home, but unfortunately I cannot leave the company.
2 p.m.
Knowing what it is like to be torn with worry, Lania can relate to the typhoon survivor's pain.
Mas mabuti na itong nakatulong ako sa...
I can help others in this way because I know what they're going through.
Kasi alam ko yung nararamdaman ng mga tao dito.
I'm happy because all of my family members are safe and alive, and I'm also sad because a lot of Filipinos were affected with this typhoon. So, and many lives were taken away. That's how I feel.
Displaying love in its simplest form, Lania and Crystal hope to help their fellow Filipinos through this difficult time.
At the free clinic in Palo Town of Central Philippines, TIMA doctors and Tzu Chi volunteers came across a mother-daughter pair who was seeking medical attention. As the 18-month-old baby was suffering from asthma, doctors and volunteers quickly worked to purchase children medication from a nearby pharmacy to ease the worrying mother's mind.
Outside Tzu Chi's free clinic, a long line of residents are waiting for medical attention, while parents and children are inside lining up for the pediatrics department. Angelica Ogorla's 18-month-old daughter is diagnosed with asthma. Since Typhoon Haiyan, she has no means to seek treatment for her baby up until now.
After the typhoon, all the residents nearby were burning garbage. The smoke has worsened my child's condition.
The mother noted that he has difficulty breathing. He breathes faster. That's why they came for consult.
However, with no children's medication available on site, doctors quickly prescribed medication for volunteers to purchase. Hearing that Tzu Chi volunteers are looking for a pharmacy, Palo resident Nomar Kasten immediately jumped in a car with volunteers to lend a helping hand. Finally arriving at the pharmacy, thanks to Nomar Karsten, the waiting crowds at the counter make way for volunteers to jump the queue.
She told everyone here we are carrying out a free clinic and are really in need of medication, so they all agreed to let us buy the needed items first.
I came with them right away because I am someone who likes to help others.
With the medication in hand, the volunteers quickly returned to the clinic site. The TIMA doctor once again reminded Angelica of how to take care of her daughter before letting her go home.
In the Philippines, to help students resume their schooling as soon as possible in the wake of Typhoon Haiyan, Tzu Chi volunteers recently traveled to Alang Alang High School to help set up prefabricated classrooms. Seeing that the volunteers were short-handed, the principal of the school mobilized 21 alumni and parents to help volunteers with their work. Thus, in 3 days' time, 10 prefab classrooms were ready for students to use.
Lucky that we were also given this kind of temporary classroom for our students.
Here at the Alang Alang High School, teachers and students are overjoyed to see the Tzu Chi volunteers who are here to help build prefabricated classrooms. As the volunteers are busy setting up the classrooms, several local volunteers, including an alumnus of the school, Timothy Nauda, show up to help out.
I want to get the people here to help that to go to build that, help the student here in Alang Alang National High School.
Following the typhoon, Timothy decided to stay in Alang Alang to help his community. Now joining the volunteers in setting up the prefab classrooms, Timothy attentively listens to their instructions.
This classroom is so very to use and to build. Compare the classroom, it's hard to build this classroom.
Regardless of the language barriers, experienced Tzu Chi volunteer Lü Zhen'an finds ways to communicate with local volunteers and facilitate the building process.
We cannot understand what they are saying. I don't know English that well, so I just show them the screws and they know what to do.
The principal of Alang Alang High School mobilized 21 alumni and parents to work with the volunteers, thus speeding up the building process.
I always say thank you. I cannot say other words but to say thank you to the foundation. It is a really big help to our students.
These prefab classrooms, once complete, will pass on the love of Tzu Chi volunteers from around the globe for countless years to come.
Although Tzu Chi's prefabricated classrooms are perhaps just temporary, for the children and teachers in the areas ravaged by Typhoon Haiyan, Tzu Chi's love will remain in their hearts forever. In fact, assembling a prefab classroom is not that easy. Despite this, Tzu Chi volunteers have already managed to complete 66 classrooms so that the students may continue with their education uninterrupted. A key to the success of the project so far was the cooperation and collaboration between the volunteers from Taiwan and the Philippines.
Hello,
Visiting, inspecting, and quickly responding to needs, Tzu Chi volunteer Henry Yunes has a lot on his plate.
今天
不是今天啊，这2个月啊。
这2个月，我又忘了。
Unable to recall how many schools he has visited over the last 2 months, Yunes, however, has kept in mind Master Zhenyan's reminder that children's education should not be disrupted. Hence, Yunes and his team continue to conduct surveys of schools in the area.
一个这样，一个这样，一个中间。有没有请我们用画图的？
Fortunately, their Taiwanese counterparts came just in time to help. 2 prefab classrooms were needed at the Stone Nino Church as a gathering place for worship. Both teams watch and learn from one another, and in just 4 hours, the classrooms were completed with the help of 30 people.
When we brought our team in, local volunteers observed and learned. Using their knowledge and skills, they were soon able to assemble classrooms better than we had been able to.
Actualizing his vow to help people in need, Hong gladly travels back and forth to Tacloban to see to the children's needs.
They're diligent and hardworking. Their eagerness to learn for the sake of their own future is really moving. That is what has motivated us to come here again and again.
When is next start?
just done.
10 days. 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 10 days.
Anytime now.
Anytime now?
Yeah, if you want to become a donating member, right now you can be a donating member.
In addition, Yunez seizes the opportunity to recruit local residents to join the Tzu Chi family.
We should work towards establishing a Tzu Chi office here, but there's still a long way to go.
With the completion of each prefab classroom, Tzu Chi's seeds of love have landed and taken root, and have become the backbone of the great love that is now flourishing on this land.
Much work went on behind the scenes in order to capture the images of Tzu Chi's blessing ceremony in the Philippines' Tacloban city. Without the efforts of the sound and lighting crew, the ITV reporters, and aerial photographers, the beauty of the ceremony would not have been able to reach the ITV viewers across the globe. An aerial camera captures a different view of the blessing ceremony in Tacloban, Philippines. This is the third time the aerial photography team has participated in a Tzu Chi disaster relief. Aerial photography is best for capturing images that handheld cameras cannot reach. However, weather conditions can be a concern.
Today's weather condition isn't actually that ideal, as there's an approaching typhoon and the wind is pretty strong, but it's still within acceptable conditions.
Returning to the ground with the help from translators, we see Dai TV reporters working on bringing their viewers touching stories from the blessing ceremony.
Their hearts have been moved and want to do something to reciprocate. That motivation can turn into a desire to help more people in need.
Handling a last test before the start of the event, the sound and lighting equipment arrives from Manila just in time. The crew assembles throughout the night, so everything is ready for the ceremony the next day.
Thankfully, the equipment arrived on time. I'm grateful for all the blessings Tzu Chi people from around the globe sent us.
The owner of the audiovisual equipment also prepared a tarp to cover the equipment in case of rain.
It's an honor to be able to do my part. I enjoy it.
Behind a perfectly executed blessing ceremony is the effort of many doing their part to help. In Palo Town, Leyte Province, Tzu Chi volunteers found many young and old among those coming forth to receive aid. However, it is not so easy for them to rebuild their lives. Tzu Chi's consolation cash gives them the most direct of assistance. Yet what they need more than monetary aid is support from one another. A part of Tzu Chi's 9th disaster relief team to arrive in the Philippines, 72-year-old Ling Fu Mei, with her silk white hair, her presence alone has been an encouragement to the survivors. She hopes other seniors like her will seize each moment in life, look to the future, and stand up again. The memories of Typhoon Haiyan are still fresh in 71-year-old Virginia's mind.
I felt helpless, so I ran to the church, but the priests weren't there. Now Tzu Chi is here to help us. There is hope again.
For the disaster survivors in Palo Town, Leyte Province, hope has finally come in the form of Tzu Chi's consolation cash, which some will use to rebuild their homes or restart their business.
Tzu Chi's assistance was really wonderful. It's just like what we were taught earlier. We need to help one another. If we do so, then our town can start anew.
Pedro lost his children in the disaster and was left with a grandchild to raise on his own. In the aftermath of the typhoon, it's the old and young that need care the most. Here to help is 72-year-old Tzu Chi volunteer Ling Fu Mei, who visited Tacloban 16 years ago with TIMA members. Returning once again, she is overwhelmed seeing the destruction of Haiyan.
Recovering from a disaster can be depressing, but maybe seeing me here, these residents will be encouraged to keep going. This is something I can help with.
With hair as white as silk, Lin bows respectfully to each donor as a deposit is made into the coin bank, moving many more residents to donate.
If I have the opportunity, I can help others too.
If Tzu Chi set up a liaison office here, would you be willing to be a Tzu Chi volunteer?
In helping others, perhaps these residents can ease the pain of the loss of loved ones and find renewed hope for the days ahead. In the Filipino town of Palo in Leyte Province, many people are still recovering from the shock of losing everything to Typhoon Haiyan. One of the survivors is John, a young 12-year-old boy who lost everyone except his grandfather Pedro to the storm. Although the tragic event has both John and Pedro in distraught, the compassion Tzu Chi has shown them gives hope that it is possible to rebuild their lives.
Mother, Father, I promise you, I will complete my education.
Losing almost all his family in Typhoon Haiyan, 12-year-old John's only relative left is his grandfather.
At the time, I was holding on to John's hand, and I was able to put him on the ceiling scaffolding. My pregnant daughter and the rest of my grandchildren were holding onto my neck.
This graveyard is filled with lives that can't be brought back. When the floodwaters rushed in, Pedro saw the impermanence of life flash before his eyes.
Then I was hit by a tree and my daughter was forced to let go. I remember her calling out to me. My neck was nearly broken.
Blaming himself for not having enough strength to grab hold of his family, with hopelessness in his eyes, Pedro stares at the remains of his house, to which he dedicated 30 years of his life. His grandson John, however, has found a way to deal with the pain.
Tzu Chi volunteers told us how to pray and get past the sadness. I want to give this money to my grandfather. This way we can purchase a new home.
Receiving a warm hug in Tzu Chi's consolation cash, for these Catholics, it's like a gift from the heavens. Pedro says he will use the money to open a small business. Restarting his life with Tzu Chi's love, Pedro and his grandson now have hope for the days ahead. We return to Indonesia at the end of the show and turn our attention back to the flooding situation in Jakarta, where Tzu Chi volunteers held aid distributions for flood victims in Tengkaren and Tanauan village. Volunteers also visited emergency shelters to raise environmental awareness as a way to prevent future flooding. We will leave you with these images. Thank you for watching. See you next week.